The nuclear crucible, Iran's survival choice versus Israel's coercive prevention. The core of the crisis, as detailed in this intelligence, is the intractable and escalating conflict over Iran's nuclear program. This has moved beyond a technical dispute over enrichment levels into an existential clash between two opposing and irreconcilable national security doctrines. 1.1. Iran's nuclear doctrine, the survival imperative. The intelligence provides a clear window into the strategic calculus of Tehran. The pursuit of a nuclear capability is not a simple quest for regional dominance, but is increasingly driven by a deep-seated, historically rooted perception of vulnerability and a belief that it is the only path to regime survival. The plot: to develop a latent or breakout nuclear capability, the ability to assemble a nuclear weapon on short notice, as the ultimate insurance policy against foreign-led regime change. The drivers of the doctrine: demonstrated vulnerability. The recent conflict was a brutal lesson for Iran. The successful Israeli and US strikes, which penetrated Iranian security, killed top scientists and commanders, and destroyed a key facility in Isfahan, proved that Iran's conventional defenses are inadequate. This military inferiority creates a powerful incentive to seek an asymmetric equalizer. The failure of diplomacy. From Tehran's perspective, the US attacks, which came despite ongoing indirect talks, are the ultimate betrayal of diplomacy. This reinforces the hardline argument that negotiating with the Great Satan is fruitless, and that only military strength, specifically a nuclear deterrent, can guarantee security, the Libya model, as a cautionary tale. Iranian leaders have undoubtedly studied the fate of Muammar Gaddafi, who gave up his nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief and better relations with the West, only to be overthrown and killed years later with NATO's help. The lesson is clear: giving up the ultimate weapon is a fatal mistake. A hostile neighborhood. The intelligence notes Iran's awareness of regional risks from Israel, Afghanistan, and Saudi Arabia. With Israel possessing a nuclear arsenal and Saudi Arabia protected by a US security guarantee, Iran sees itself as being in a dangerously disadvantaged position. The strategy: defiant reconstitution and ambiguity. Despite the heavy losses, Iran's strategy is now one of defiant reconstitution under a cloak of ambiguity. The plot: to leverage its remaining uranium stockpiles and hidden centrifuges to rebuild its program, likely in more dispersed, secret and hardened locations, while publicly maintaining a posture of peaceful intent. The intention: to play for time. Iran knows that without continuous airstrikes it can quickly re-excavate and rebuild. Its goal is to use the current ceasefire to frantically repair, salvage, and reconstitute its capabilities. To control the narrative. The insistence that the program is peaceful, coupled with membership in the NPT, unlike Israel, is a key part of its public diplomacy. It allows Iran to frame itself as a responsible actor being illegally attacked, even as it inches closer to a breakout capability. The IAEA's finding of no credible signs of an active weapons program is a crucial piece of evidence Iran uses to support this narrative. 1.2. Israel's doctrine: coercive prevention. In direct opposition to Iran's survival doctrine, Israel has clearly articulated a doctrine of aggressive, unilateral, and preemptive action. This is a shift from containment to active prevention. The plot: to use all means necessary, including military strikes, cyber attacks, and targeted assassinations, to permanently prevent Iran from ever acquiring a nuclear weapon. The core tenets of the doctrine: preemption. Israel will not wait for Iran to build a bomb. The recent conflict, launched after missile launches and escalating hostile actions, shows a willingness to strike preemptively based on perceived threats. Unilateralism. While the recent strikes were coordinated with the US, Israel's fundamental position remains that it will act alone if necessary. Its non-membership in the NPT and refusal of IAEA inspections are manifestations of this belief that its security cannot be outsourced to international bodies. The Begin Doctrine 2.0. Israel's actions are a modern application of the Begin Doctrine, established after its 1981 strike on Iraq's Osirak reactor, which holds that no hostile regional power will be allowed to acquire nuclear weapons. The strikes on Iran are a reaffirmation of this non-negotiable red line. Targeting the human capital, the repeated deaths of Iranian nuclear scientists are not accidental collateral damage. They are a core part of the Israeli strategy. By eliminating the human expertise, Israel aims to cripple the program in a way that destroying centrifuges alone cannot. This clash of doctrines, Iran's desperate push for a survival deterrent and Israel's ruthless determination to prevent it, creates an inherently unstable and explosive dynamic, with the recent 12-day war likely being just the opening chapter. Part 2. The Diplomatic Chaos, the Trump administration's War of Nerves. The role of the United States in this crisis is a complex and often baffling mix of coercive threats, public denials, and reported back-channel diplomacy. The personality and style of President Donald Trump dominate this landscape, creating an environment of profound uncertainty. 2.1. The good cop, bad cop monologue. President Trump appears to be playing both good cop and bad cop simultaneously, often in the same breath. The bad cop, the aggressor, the plot, to use overwhelming psychological pressure, and the credible threat of renewed military force to coerce Iran into submission, the tactics, public threats. The statement that he canceled efforts to lift sanctions and his direct threats to bomb Iran again are the stick, personal insults. The harsh criticism of Khamenei and the slapped America in the face rhetoric are designed to humiliate and provoke the Iranian leadership, keeping them emotionally off balance. Taking credit for military action. By emphasizing the U.S. role in the airstrikes, Trump reinforces the credibility of his threats. The good cop, the savior, the plot, to offer a potential off-ramp and portray himself as a merciful deal-maker, thereby creating a sliver of hope that Iran might cling to. The tactics, brokering the ceasefire, publicly announcing the ceasefire positions him as the statesman who prevented a wider war. Sparing Khamenei. The claim that he rejected Israeli plans to assassinate the supreme leader is a powerful, if unverifiable, message. It is designed to tell Khamenei, "You are alive because of my personal intervention, you owe me." The reported aid deal, the fake news denial of a $30 billion deal, is a public necessity, but the fact that the reports exist suggests a back-channel where economic incentives are being explored. This is the carrot, the intention. This dual-track strategy is designed to create a state of maximum confusion and desperation in Tehran. The goal is to break the Iranian regime's will by subjecting it to a schizophrenic policy of threats and potential rewards, making it impossible for them to form a coherent, long-term strategy. Trump wants to force them into a position where the only rational choice is to seek a deal with him personally, as he is the only one who can call off both the good cop and the bad cop. 2.2. The diplomatic standoff, a war of words and conditions. The result of this chaotic diplomacy is a complete standoff, now being waged through public statements and preconditions. Iran's precondition, the demand that Trump abandon his insulting attitude towards Khamenei, is a clever countermove. It is Iran's attempt to seize control of the diplomatic process by setting its own terms. It is a way of saying, we will not negotiate under duress or humiliation. If you want a deal, you must first treat us with respect. This is a tactic to regain agency and stall for time. The U.S. position. The U.S. in turn insists on verifiable curbs on Iran's nuclear program. The impasse, with Iran rejecting talks due to the betrayal of the airstrikes and the U.S. unwilling to stop its coercive pressure. The diplomatic track is effectively frozen, even as indirect talks may continue on the margins. Part 3. The Eurasian Shockwave, Russia's Strategic Depth Anxiety. The intelligence from the Valdai Club provides a crucial window into how this Middle Eastern crisis is perceived in Moscow. For Russia, this is not a distant conflict. It is a direct threat to the stability of its southern flank and its broader strategic position in Eurasia. 3.1. The geopolitical doctrine, Central Asia as Russia's vulnerable underbelly. The core concept. The analysis that Russia's lack of natural borders compels it to view Central Asia as an extended strategic space is the key to understanding Russian foreign policy. For Moscow, Central Asia is not just a collection of neighboring states. It is a vital buffer zone, the security of which is inextricably linked to Russia's own. The plot, to maintain a stable, friendly and Russian-aligned bloc of states in Central Asia that can insulate the Russian heartland from threats emanating from the south. 3.2. Iran as the geopolitical linchpin, the fear of the launch pad. Iran's stability is seen as a critical element in the security architecture of this entire region. The primary fear is that a weakened, chaotic or fragmented Iran would become a conduit for foreign intrusion or a launchpad for foreign intervention into Central Asia. The scenario: Moscow envisions a post-regime Iran descending into chaos, creating a vacuum that could be filled by external powers, namely the US and its allies. These powers could then use Iranian territory to fund, train, and arm extremist or separatist groups, which would then be funneled north into Central Asian republics like Tajikistan or Uzbekistan. The ultimate target. This is seen as an asymmetric strategy aimed at putting pressure on both Moscow via instability in the Caucasus and Beijing via instability in Xinjiang. It is a way for the West to wage a proxy war against its two main rivals without direct confrontation. 3.3. Russia's pragmatic counter-strategy. Faced with this threat, Russia is articulating a sophisticated counter-strategy that balances its own interests with a respect for regional sovereignty. The plot: to build a self-reliant regional security architecture in Central Asia, with Russia acting as the primary security guarantor, but not as an imperial master. The intention: to foster internal resilience. The statement that protecting sovereignty in Central Asia is the responsibility of the region's own governments is a crucial element. Russia is encouraging and likely assisting these states to strengthen their own security apparatus. This is more sustainable for Russia and more acceptable to the Central Asian leaders. To position itself as the responsible partner. By contrasting its role as a friend and neighbor with the West's perceived desire to use the region as a strategic tool, Russia is engaged in a diplomatic campaign to secure the long-term loyalty of the Central Asian elites to avoid overcommitment. The historical lesson from World War I is a clear signal that Russia will not be dragged into a wider conflict by ambiguous commitments. Its support will be calculated and based on its own direct national security interests. Grand synthesis, a world of interlocking escalatory crises. The intelligence, when synthesized, reveals a world where regional conflicts are no longer contained but are deeply interconnected, creating a dangerous and escalatory global dynamic. The failure of coercive deterrence, the US-Israeli strikes intended to deter Iran, have likely had the opposite strategic effect. By demonstrating Iran's vulnerability, they have strengthened the case within Tehran for acquiring the ultimate deterrent, a nuclear weapon, as a survival choice. The rise of personality-driven diplomacy. The central role of President Trump and his personalistic, often contradictory style of engagement has replaced traditional, institutional diplomacy. This creates an environment of extreme volatility and uncertainty where the course of international relations can shift based on a single statement or a perceived personal slight. The interconnectivity of theaters. The conflict in the Middle East is not a standalone event. It has direct and profound implications for the strategic balance in Central Asia, forcing a major power like Russia to reassess its security posture and prepare for new threats on its southern flank. This demonstrates how instability in one region can metastasize and create new flashpoints elsewhere. The war of words as a primary battlefield. With the kinetic conflict paused, the primary battlefield has become the information space. The war is now being fought with preconditions for talks, accusations of disrespect, public threats, and competing narratives of victory and defeat. In this environment, controlling the story is as important as controlling the territory. The world is caught in a precarious standoff. Iran, feeling cornered, is more determined than ever. Israel, feeling empowered, is more aggressive than ever. The US, under its current leadership, is more unpredictable than ever. And Russia, watching from the sidelines, is more anxious than ever. This is not a recipe for stability, but a formula for a new, more dangerous and more widespread era of global confrontation.